This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. Send your attendance in chat box and please join meetings on time. Okay, I've already told you 9:20 is the class. It's still 9:30. Only 88 members have joined. So next time onwards, make sure you join on time. Okay. Now let's start class for today. It's physiology of parathyroid glands and its disorders. Here you can see this is the thyroid gland. Okay, and parathyroid gland is located around the posterior aspect of the thyroid glands. There are two pairs of parathyroid glands, that is four, two superior and two inferior. Okay. Richard Owen discovered the parathyroid glands in 1850, a rhinoceros. In a species called rhinoceros, Richard Owen discovered the parathyroid glands. Okay, there are four tiny glands which are located in the neck on the posterior surface of thyroid gland. They have two superiorly and two inferiorly are present. The size of the glands are very small. They are almost equal to the size of a rice grain. Okay, each weighing around 30 to 15 milligrams, but can weigh up to 70 milligrams and 3 to 4 to 8, till 8 millimeters in diameters. Okay, women usually have larger parathyroid gland than men. It produces only one hormone, that is called parathyroid, which is responsible mainly for the control of one's blood calcium level. Coming to parathyroid hormone, it is also known as parathyroid or parathyrin. It is produced by chief cells as a polypeptide hormone and containing of 84 amino acids. The half-life is approximately 4 meters. It acts to increase the concentration of ionic calcium in the blood. Okay, and the major target organs are mainly four. Always remember, it is kidney, skeletal system, and the intestine. Okay, this is the target organs what you see. Okay, they are bones, intestine, and the kidney. Okay, now coming to the action, always remember parathyroid gland will increase the level of the calcium in the serum. So to increase the level of the calcium in the serum, what does it do? It acts first on the bone. It causes increases bone resorption, which indirectly increases the calcium. Okay, secondly, it acts on the kidney, which causes more and more reabsorption of vitamin D and excretion of phosphate. And this vitamin D acts on the intestine and causes increased absorption of calcium and phosphate. Okay, and increased absorption of phosphate is under the regulation of one more peptide called FGF23 peptide, 23 peptide. Okay, always remember parathyroid gland acts on the bone, which increases bone resorption and increases the level of calcium in the serum. Second, it acts on the kidney, causes reabsorption of vitamin D, which predominantly 80% takes place in the proximal convoluted tubule, okay, and causes excretion of phosphate. This vitamin D, which is reabsorbed from the kidney, acts on the intestine and causes increased level of calcium and phosphate. Okay. So one thing you have to remember that parathyroid gland does not have, or parathormone does not have direct action on the intestine. It acts via the vitamin D, which is reabsorbed from the kidney due to parathormone. Okay, and whatever you see this in dotted red color, these are negative feedback mechanisms. So increased calcium will indirectly reduce parathyroid gland the secretion, and which will reduce parathormone. Okay, increase vitamin like calcium and phosphate indirectly will reduce parathyroid gland secretion. Similarly, increased calcium reabsorption from the kidney, okay, will cause increased serum level and reduction of parathyroid gland hormones. So, parathyroid glands are responsible for maintaining calcium balance in the serum. Okay, acts on bone, intestine, kidney. Bone increased resorption and increased serum calcium. Intestine increased absorption of calcium and phosphate. Okay, which is mediated by vitamin D. Kidney increased absorption of vitamin D, which in turn causes increased calcium absorption and phosphate excretion. Now coming to biosynthesis, it is always produced from a pre-pro hormone. Okay, it is not produced directly. Okay, the gene of which is located on chromosome 11. It is produced as pre-pro parathyroid hormone, which contains 115 amino acids. Okay, then in the endoplasmic reticulum, 29 amino acids are removed, So it is called proparathyroid hormone, which contains almost about 89 amino acids. Then in the Golgi apparatus, more amino acids are removed by the enzyme called peptidase to become the mature hormone, which is called parathormone. It is stored in the secretory vesicles within the cell and it is released when as and when required. So basically, first is pre-pro hormone, then pro hormone, and then the mature parathyroid hormone. Okay, mature parathyroid hormone, after it is secreted, it is stored in the vesicles and released when as and when it's required. Same, the role of parathyroid glands. Parathyroid hormone raises the blood calcium by breaking down the bone and causes calcium release. Increase increase the ability of GIT to absorb calcium from food, increasing the kidney's ability to retain calcium that would otherwise be lost in the urine. Okay. This is once again a small review. Okay, basically there's some channel called CAS, that is calcium sensing channel, or it's called as calcium sensing receptors. Okay, these are the receptors which act either by increasing the calcium or decreasing the calcium depending upon the serum calcium levels. Okay, suppose you think the calcium levels are low. Okay, this will cause increase in action of the receptors. Okay, which in turn will stimulate parathyroid gland, which will produce parathormone, which will act on the bone, increase reabsorption in calcium reflex, which will act on the kidney, which causes increased vitamin D and calcium reabsorption and decreased phosphate reabsorption, which indirectly will act on the intestine and cause increased calcium reabsorption. All these mechanisms are predominantly responsible for increased calcium in the serum. Okay, and after the serum calcium increases beyond the normal level, it will inhibit the parathyroid gland, which in turn will reduce the serum calcium. Okay, this is also same brief review. Blood calcium concentration drops, release of parathormone from the chief cells of parathyroid glands. Then effect of parathyroid on bone, that is, it inhibits osteoblastosis, stimulates osteoclast class. Bone is broken down, releasing calcium into the bloodstream. That is one. Second thing is it stimulates the kidney tubule cell to recover waste calcium from the urine. It stimulates kidney tubule cell to release calcitrol. Okay. Third thing is it stimulates intestine to absorb calcium from the digestive system, which in turn will increase the blood calcium levels. Okay. Always remember there is one more hormone which is secreted by the parafollicular cells of thyroid, that is C cells, which is called calcitonin. And calcitonin always will reduce the serum calcium. Okay. The effect of parathyroid hormone and calcitonin are opposite. Okay. Parathyroid hormone will increase the serum calcium. Calcitonin will reduce the serum calcium. So once the serum calcium increases beyond a certain point, the calcitonin is released from the thyroid glands, that is by parafollicular cells, which will act on the bone. It will stimulate osteoblasts, inhibits osteoclast, and calcium is removed from the blood and used to build bone. Okay. Then depending upon the body mechanism, blood calcium can be normal or blood calcium concentration drops. Okay, why calcium is so important? There are a wide range of functions which are responsible for which are responsible mainly by calcium. One is it stimulates hormone secretion. It is responsible for muscle contraction, blood clotting, nerve function, transmission of nerve impulse, necessary for activation of some enzymes, transportation across membranes, maintain regular heartbeat, that is conduct electricity. Okay. Basically, most of the functions takes place like when calcium forms complex with phosphate or carbonate, or some functions can take place on only calcium ion, that is Ca plus 2 ions. What is the normal calcium levels? It is around 10 milligrams per deciliter. Okay. In the calcium homeostasis process, many key components are involving. Same. Three hormones which are responsible for calcium homeostasis. One is parathyroid hormone. Second one is vitamin D. Third one is calcitonin. Now coming to calcitonin, it is also known as thyrocalcitonin. It's a 32 amino acid polypeptide. It is produced by parafollicular cells, also known as C cells of thyroid, which regulates the calcium levels. What are the actions? Actions of calcitonin is predominantly on the bone. So receptors for calcitonin are found in both bones and kidneys, but predominantly it acts in the bone by increasing the activity of osteoclasts and also increasing calcium in the urine. So it reduces the calcium. This is calcium reduction, the hormone which reduces the calcium. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is formed in the skin when a cholesterol precursor is exposed to UV light. Okay, following which activation takes place at two levels. One is in the liver, one is in the kidney. Okay, in the liver, 25 hydroxylation will take place, and the kidney, 1 alpha hydroxylation will take place. and which results in the formation of 125 dihydroxy vitamin D3, okay, which is responsible mainly for gut absorption of calcium by stimulating formation of calcium binding protein in the intestinal epithelial cells. This is also responsible for absorption of phosphate. Vitamin D also promotes intestinal absorption of phosphate ion. The exact mechanism is not known, but they tell that negatively charged phosphate ion may flow passively through the intestinal cell membrane because of the flux of the positively charged calcium ions. So, as the calcium ions is moved across the cell membrane, because of its positivity, there should be a co-negative hormone which passes across the cell membrane. So like that, phosphate will pass across the cell membrane. This is one of the theory, but the exact mechanism by which vitamin D promotes intestinal absorption of phosphate is not yet known. In the bone, vitamin D may play a synergistic role with parathyroid hormone in stimulating osteoclast proliferation and bone resorption. Okay, compared to parathyroid hormones, vitamin D exerts a much slower regulatory effect on calcium balance. So suppose if a calcium levels falls down acutely, okay, the first thing which acts to increase the calcium levels is parathyroid hormone, okay, followed by next vitamin D. So vitamin D will exert an effect which is very slow. Okay, the first thing which acts fast in is responsible for maintenance of calcium balance is vitamin D. Parathyroid hormone. Vitamin D acts slower. Now coming to summary, same parathyroid hormone increases blood calcium concentration when calcium levels fall below normal. First, parathyroid hormone enhances reabsorption of calcium by kidney. It then stimulates osteoclast activity and inhibits osteoblast activity. Finally, parathyroid hormone stimulates synthesis and secretion of calcitriol by the kidney, which enhances calcium absorption by the digestive system. Now coming to disorders, always remember any gland disorders will be predominantly of two types. One is hyper and one is hypo. Now we'll discuss hyperthyroidism. In next class, we'll discuss hypothyroidism. Okay, coming to parathyroidism, it is third most common endocrine disorder after diabetes and thyroid. It occurs due to excess secretion of parathyroid hormone extensively above the normal level. The normal level is around 12 to 70 picogram per ml. Okay, if secretion occurs above the normal level, it is called hyperparathyroidism. It is categorized into three types. One is primary, one is secondary, one is tertiary. Okay, primary is predominantly that the gland will secrete more of parathyroid hormones. Secondary is because of some other problem, like because of decreased calcium or increased phosphate in the serum. Okay, there is increased secretion or increased parathyroid hormone production or absorption. The tertiary forms is basically what will happen in chronic kidney disease. The negative feedback mechanism on the parathyroid hormone is lost. So the parathyroid hormone, irrespective of the calcium levels in the blood, will autonomously produce more and more amount of parathyroid hormones. So hyperparathyroidism, one is primary, secondary, tertiary. Primary is three types. One is adenoma, hyperplasia, and carcinoma, of which adenoma is very common. Secondly, it's parathyroid hyperplasia. Tertiary is autonomous nodule of on top of hyperplasia. Okay. Same parathyroid disorders. This will discuss next class. Okay. First, primary is hyperparathyroidism, hyperplasia, adenoma, carcinoma. Secondary is vitamin D deficiency, decreased calcium intake, or chronic renal failure, okay, which in turn will result in production of more and more parathyroid hormone levels. Okay, coming to the differences in primary, what is the pathology? Pathology is hyperfunctioning of parathyroid cells due to hyperplasia, adenoma, or carcinoma. It is usually associated with men. There is multiple endocrine neoplasm. Okay, the serum calcium levels are high, serum phosphate levels are low or normal. What is the management? I'll discuss in detail later, but just for comparison, I'm telling you here in brief what is the management. Management is usually surgery if symptomatic, or cinacalcet can be considered in those not fit for surgery. Okay. Now coming to secondary. Secondary is physiological stimulation of parathyroid in response to hypocalcemia. It usually occurs due to two things. One is chronic renal failure and one is vitamin D deficiency. Basically, how this occurs in chronic renal failure, what will happen is the calcium which is supposed to be get absorbed is not absorbed and it is lost in the urine. So serum calcium will reduce and the phosphate which is supposed to get lost in the urine gets reabsorbed. So serum phosphate increases. So since the serum phosphate is increasing and serum calcium is low, it is the stimulus for secretion of parathyroid hormones from parathyroid glands. So that's why there will be increased secretion of parathyroid hormones from the parathyroid glands. Similarly, same thing happens with vitamin D. But in vitamin D, the phosphate levels are also low. So vitamin D specifically is responsible for reabsorption of phosphate and calcium from the intestine. So since the vitamin D is deficient, there will be impaired absorption and there will be reduced serum calcium and phosphate levels, okay, which indirectly is a stimulus for secretion of parathyroid hormones in the glands. So coming to secondary, serum calcium is low or high, the normal. Serum phosphate is high, but in vitamin D, serum phosphate is low. What is the management? Management is treatment of underlying causes. Now coming to tertiary. Tertiary is you have following long-term physiological stimulation, which will lead to hyperplasia. Okay, it is seen mainly in CKD. There is no other condition which causes tertiary hyperparathyroidism. Okay, it is seen only in CKD. So where serum calcium levels are high, serum phosphate levels are high, management is usually cinacalcet or surgery in those who does not respond to treatment. Now coming to primary hyperparathyroidism, three causes as I've told you: adenoma, hyperplasia, and carcinoma. Adenoma, 80% of the causes. A rim of normal parathyroid tissue around the adenoma distinguishes adenoma from hyperplasia. Hyperplasia, in around 15 to 20% of cases, no rim of parathyroid hormone is present, and it also lacks of stromal fat. And in hyperplasia, all the four glands are involved. Okay, there's no specificity or there's no predilection to one gland. And always remember the hyperparathyroidism, which occurs as a part of Men's syndrome, is due to hyperplasia. Okay. Now coming to parathyroid carcinoma, occurs in around less than 1% of cases. Exceptionally high calcium or palpable neck mass should give rise to suspicion of parathyroid carcinoma. Excision with thyroid lobectomy is indicated. Radical neck dissection for recurrent disease is usually required. Recur locally in around 30% patients, or 30% patients then can go to distinct areas for metastasis like lung, liver, and bone. It is difficult to distinguish adenoma from hyperplasia histologically. Now coming to men 1, men 2. Men 1, as I told you, 3 P's: parathyroid adenoma, okay, pituitary adenoma, pancreatic islet tumor. But parathyroid, it's mostly hyperplasia, okay, then followed by adenoma. Then coming to men 2, same parathyroid adenoma, thyroid pituitary carcinoma, and pleochromocytoma. Now coming to secondary hyperparathyroidism, hyperplasia of parathyroid in the presence in response to decreased serum calcium levels, which occurs in linear osteodystrophy or CRF and vitamin D deficiency. Tertiary hyperparathyroidism, autonomous parathyroid function on top of parathyroid hyperplasia, even after renal transplant, is also called as tertiary hyperparathyroidism. So there will always be a parathyroid adenoma on which there will be hyperplasia and increased production and secretion of parathyroid hormone levels. Now coming to clinical manifestations. Clinical manifestations of hyperparathyroidism is always due to increased calcium levels, that is hypercalcemia. So once the calcium levels in the serum increases, there is always predilection to stone formation. The stone formation can be anywhere. Okay, and there's a small short form or mnemonic for it. This bones, groans, and psychic moans. Bones is in bone what will happen. Okay, sorry, bones, stones, groans, and psychic moans. Okay, bone is in bone what will happen. Stones is the formation of renal stones. Okay, groans is will have calcification in the pancreas or pancreatic duct. They can present as peptic ulcer disease. So since they'll have lot of severe abdominal pain, it is called as groaning or having a lot of pain. Okay, psychic moans. Psychic moans is due to the deposition of calcium in the brain or in the basal ganglions. They can present with altered sensorium or decreased concentration or sometimes psychosis. Okay, that's why it's called like that. So in short, that is it. Bones, groans, moans or psychic bones, groans, sorry, bones, stones, groans, and psychic moans. Okay, coming to clinical manifestations, renal, polyuria, polydipsia is present, nephrolithiasis and nephrocalcinosis is present. Okay, distal renal tubular acidosis, nephrogenic diabetic insipidus, acute and chronic renal insufficiency. Coming to gastric, it can be anorexia, nausea, vomiting, bowel hypomotility and constipation. Pancreatitis is very common, and peptic ulcer disease. Coming to musculoskeletal, they have muscle weakness, a bone pain, osteoporosis, or osteopenia. Neurological, it is decreased concentration, confusion, fatigue, stupor, and coma. Cardiovascular, there is always shortening of QT interval, bradycardia, hypertension. Now coming to how do you diagnose? Okay, to diagnose the hyperparathyroidism, okay, you have to do three things. One is serum calcium, one is serum parathyroid levels, one is phosphate, okay, and sometimes urinary calcium levels are to be done. I'll tell you the condition why you do urinary calcium levels, okay. But in general, if you do these four tests based on these four, you can tell it is hyperparathyroidism or not. So again, calcium level will be increased, phosphate level will be reduced, okay, intact parathyroid hormone levels will be increased. There are few other tests to be done, but it's always not necessary. Like chloride, phosphate, chloride will be increased. So phosphate is necessary. Chloride is will be increased or high normal. Magnesium can be unchanged or decreased. Uric acid can be normal or increased. ALP can be normal or increased. Acid-base status, they'll have hyperchloremic metabolic alkalosis sometimes. Okay, and vitamin D also you should do. Vitamin D can be normal or increased. Okay, what the conditions? Where you have to do urinary calcium, or there's something called calcium creatinine ratio. Okay? There's one disease which is called as familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia. Okay? This disorder occurs due to mutation of the CASRG receptor, what I have told you. So what will happen is the calcium, instead of being excreted, will get more and more reabsorbed. So that's why the serum calcium increases and urinary calcium reduces. So in that case, to differentiate that from hyperparathyroidism, you do you do urinary calcium levels and calcium creatinine ratio. Okay. What suppose in 24 hours urine calcium excretion is characteristically low, it is less than 100 milligrams per deciliter, and serum calcium to creatinine clearance ratio is usually less than 0.01. Okay, then you tell it is a patient with familial hypocalcemic hypercalcemia. Okay. Then suppose if the calcium creatinine ratio is more, that is around more than 0.02, then you tell it is because of primary hyperparathyroidism. Okay. So the condition which can be distinguished based on urinary calcium levels is your familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia. This is the X-ray which will show you the changes. Okay. This is an AP view. This arrow what it is pointing, okay, will show subperiosteal bone resorption along the radial aspect of the middle phalanx. This is the middle phalanx. This is the radial aspect. Normally, this is supposed to be straight. Okay, since the bone resorption is there, this appears curved. Here you can see curved. Curved. Okay. There's one more characteristic finding called Rucker-Jersey spine. Okay. Prominent vertebral sub and plates density due to hyperparathyroidism and usually secondary to chronic fluid failure. This is a picture showing Rucker-Jersey spine. Okay. It's here it is more darker, lighter, darker, lighter. Similarly, here you see darker, lighter, darker, lighter. Okay. There's one more method by which you can identify parathyroid adenoma. It is called as Testamebe technetium in subtraction scintigraphy. It is usually most widely used and accurate modality with sensitivity of more than 80% for detection of parathyroid adenomas. Useful for parathyroid localization due to delay the washout of the radionuclide material from hypercellular parathyroid tissue compared to normal thyroid tissue. Basically, what happens since the cells are hypercellular, okay, the amount of time required for the dye to get washed out from the gland is delayed. So that is the main principle you localize the adenoma. Okay. Same. This is also a picture showing this highlight part. What you see, closer view. This you see is parathyroid adenoma. Okay. Neck ultrasound also can be done. It is highly sensitive, but to be done only by experienced people. It is inexpensive, non-invasive, and predictable in the operating room. Helpful for characterization and evaluation of any thyroid pathology. Facilitating operative planning. Okay, this is a common problem since basically people who are having thyroid pathology, 30% will have hyperthyroidism. Sensitivity is reduced in patients with thyroid nodule. Sonographic characteristics of parathyroid adenoma include homogeneous hypoechogenicity and an extrathyroidal feeding vessel with peripheral vascularity seen on color Doppler imaging. Where do you see false negative in substernal, ectopic, and undissociated tumors? This is again brief review. Hyperparathyroidism. Okay, what are the things you take into consideration? One is primary hyperthyroidism, familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia, vitamin D deficiency, humoral hypercalcemia of malignancy, and milk alkali syndrome. There are two more conditions which can cause hyperparathyroidism. Okay, one is humoral hypercalcemia of malignancy. That is, if there is any malignancy present in the body, okay, there are some organ like solid organ tumors like breast, lungs, and in case of leukemia and lymphoma, there will be secretion of peptide called parathyroid related peptide. Okay, that in turn will cause increased serum calcium levels. That is one. Second thing, one more mechanism for humoral hypercalcemia of malignancy is autoimmune mechanism. Okay, which in turn will be responsible for secretion of increased calcium levels. So, to differentiate normal hyperparathyroidism from humoral hypercalcemia of malignancies, one test to be done is to check the levels of parathyroid hormone related polypeptide. Okay. So again, primary serum calcium can be higher normal, PTH is higher normal, vitamin D is normal, phosphorus is lower normal. One more is familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia. Serum calcium is higher normal, PTH is normal or mildly high, vitamin D is normal, phosphorus is lower normal. Vitamin D deficiency, serum calcium is lower normal, PTH is high or normal, vitamin D low, phosphorus is lower normal. Humoral hypercalcemia of malignancy, calcium is high, phosphorus is low, vitamin D is normal, phosphorus is lower normal. Milk alkali syndrome, calcium is high, PTH is low, vitamin D is normal, serum phosphorus is lower high. Something called milk alkali syndrome is there are few set of people who on taking excess of milk products can present with increased calcium levels and which in turn will cause reduction of the thyroid hormone levels. Okay. These are usually the FHH and primary hyperparathyroidism are usually primary. Okay. Humoral hypercalcemia of malignancy and milk alkali syndrome are some other causes of hypercalcemia, but in turn doesn't have any role to play in hyperparathyroidism. Okay, this is a flow chart which you see when you this is actually approach to hypercalcemia. Okay, measure intact parathyroid hormone levels if it is elevated or mid upper normal or low. If it is low, evaluated for non-PTH mediated causes for hypercalcemia. Okay, if it is elevated or if it is mid upper normal. Okay, if it is elevated, it can be two things. One is primary hyperparathyroidism or familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia. Okay, then you have to measure urinary calcium excretion. If it is mid upper normal, also same thing. So you have to measure urinary calcium excretion. If the excretion is more than 200 ml, then it can be a primary hyperparathyroidism. Then you have to suggest guidelines for surgery, measure bone marrow density, to refer for surgery or monitor whichever is likely. Okay. Second case, if the excretion is less than 200 but more than 100 milligrams per deciliter, same thing you have to see. Again, it can be primary or it can be familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia. Okay. Then you have to measure vitamin D. But in case if the calcium urinary excretion is less than 100 and if calcium creatinine ratio is less than 0.01, it is 90% likely to be familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia. Okay, then you can consider vitamin deficiency also was one of the differential diagnosis. Then you measure the vitamin D levels. Okay, when you measure vitamin D levels, if it is low, then you can differentiate or you can think that it can be vitamin D deficiency, okay, which presents along with primary hyperparathyroidism versus FHH. Okay, then you repeat vitamin D and reassess urinary calcium excretion. If it is normal or high, that is more than 200, it can be primary hyperparathyroidism. If it is low, less than 100, and calcium creatinine ratio less than 0.01, it can be FHH. Okay, then if vitamin D levels are normal, again you have to see way between primary hyperparathyroidism versus FHH, and then monitor or you see any other cause can be there. Okay, basically in short, first you measure the parathyroid hormone levels. Okay, if it is low, then it can be the hypercalcemia can be because of other reasons. If it is elevated or mid upper normal, two things. One is familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia. Okay, and primary hyperparathyroidism. So in that you measure urinary calcium excretion, okay, calcium creatinine ratio, and vitamin D. Based on these things, if urinary calcium excretion is less than 100 milligrams per 24 hours, and if calcium creatinine ratio is less than 0.01, then you can tell it is familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia. Okay, and simultaneously you have to measure vitamin D levels also. Okay, this is in short. I know this table is very confusing for for you people. So in short, remember like that. Indications for parathyroidectomy and role of medical management. Patients who have developed complications and have classic symptoms should undergo parathyroidectomy. Asymptomatic people can started on medical management or undergo surgery. Okay, there are few criteria based on which an asymptomatic patient should undergo surgery. Okay, I'll tell you the criteria later. What are the medical options present? One is anti-resorptive treatments like bisphosphonates, hormone replacement therapy, or selective estrogen receptors. Okay, bisphosphonates and replacement therapy are reasonable options in patients for whom skeletal protection is needed, like in like postmenopausal patients. Okay, then more recently, one is calcium mimetic, that is cinacalcet. Modifiers of the sensitivity of CASR receptor have been used in randomized multicentric controlled trials and have been shown to decrease both serum calcium and thyroid hormone levels in both symptomatic and asymptomatic patients. Unfortunately, bone density failed to improve in these medically treated patients. So, if you have required skeletal protection, you have to use bisphosphate and hormone replacement therapy. Indications for parathyroidectomy in patients who are asymptomatic. First thing is calcium level is more than 1 milligram per deciliter above the upper limit of normal. If GFR is less than 60 ml per minute, okay, substantially decreased bone mineral density at lumbar spine, hip, or distal radius. That is the if it is more than 2.5 standard deviations from below the peak bone mass, or if its t-score is less than minus 25. Okay, anyone whose age is less than 50 years, long-term medical surveillance not desired or possible. Okay, significant changes from previous guidelines pertain to the fact that hypercalciuria, that is more than 400 mg calcium per 24 hours, in the absence of nephrocalcinosis, is no longer considered an indication for parathyroidectomy, and absolute GFR, that is less rate, that is less than 60 ml per minute, rather than reduction of creatinine clearance by 30% is used. So basically, instead of telling that GFR less than 60 is an indication, you have to tell that if creatinine clearance is less than 30%, it can be used as a threshold for recommending for surgery. So thank you. So today's class we have seen the anatomy and physiology of parathyroid gland and its hormone that's parathyroid, how vitamin D and how calcitonin are responsible for calcium homeostasis, hyperparathyroidism, what is primary, secondary, and tertiary. Okay, how do you treat? The predominant mechanism is usually surgery. Okay, in patients who are asymptomatic, by following the above criteria, like if creatinine clearance is more than 30%, if age, based on bone mineral density. Okay, when you have to go for surgical treatment, already I have told you. Coming to medical, it can be bisphosphonates, it can be hormone replacement therapy, it can be cinacalcet or calcium mimetic agents. Okay. Next class, I'll teach you about hypoparathyroidism, and by within next class, your parathyroid disorders are over. Then there'll be around 3 to 4 classes on diabetes, and with that, your endocrinology is almost over. All of you, did you see send your attendance?